Hi, welcome to Take a Break, Take a Breath for Friday, February 11th. I'm Rick Boyer, the pastor of Prospect Presbyterian Church, and Take a Break, Take a Breath is an invitation for you to stop in the middle of your day and to just rest for a bit, to breathe, and to center yourself in God who made you and loves you and calls you by name and knows you even better than you know yourself. Each time we come together, we have a guided meditation. And for now, we are reading our way through the Gospel of Luke. And as I share the stories of the Gospel of Luke, we invite you to take on or to see the story from the perspective of different characters in the story, and then to go back and read it later and see that same story from the perspective of a different character in the story. Today we are on Luke 5:17 to 26. That's Luke 5:17 to 26. Jesus is he's teaching in the area of Galilee, and now his word about him is spread. And so for the first time, teachers of the law and Pharisees show up. Now, Pharisees aren't as big a player in Jesus' day as they seem to be in the gospel. They're a bigger player in the stories of the gospel than in the larger society. They were a small group of deeply dedicated scholars, students of the Hebrew scriptures who believed in strictly following the law and the way of God in order to be prepared to be part of the incoming reign of God for justice and peace. And so it was a very positive motivation for them, and they didn't exert a lot of political power or societal power actually until after the temple is destroyed, and then their status seems to rise. In this particular case, there is a man who is paralyzed, and he has friends who bring him on a mat to see Jesus, to be healed. They can't get in, they lower him down through the roof, and Jesus heals him. And the crowd around is watching, and the Pharisees and scribes are not happy. And eventually, Jesus heals the man, and he walks out the door and goes to his home. So, if you haven't already done so, I invite you to go to a quiet place in your house and close the door to the room, if the room does indeed have a door, and settle into a comfortable chair. And close your eyes and take some deep breaths. And as you breathe in the breath of God. And as you breathe out all that separates you from God. And as you breathe in the breath of life. And as you breathe out all that does not give you life. As you breathe in God's peace. And as you breathe out all of your worries and fears and anxieties, all the things that disturb your peace. Keep breathing deeply in and out. In and out. And as you continue to breathe deeply, allow yourself to become aware of God's presence, of the peace of God that is falling on you. Perhaps imagine it like a blanket that you pull up over you a little at a time. And the warmth of that blanket is God's peace. So at first you pull it up over your feet to warm your feet. And the peace of God settles on your feet, and the weary bones in your feet feel not so weary. And then you pull it up to your waist, and the warmth of God's peace settles into your legs. And the muscles relax. They're resting. And they feel renewed. And then you pull it up to just under your arms. The warmth of God's peace settles on your abdomen, and all of the agitations that were there in your abdomen and your stomach are calmed as God's peace settles there. The warmth of God's peace settles on your chest. Your lungs are filled with good air, and breathing out everything that separates you from God. Your heart rate slows to a calm and resting pace. The warmth spreads from the front of your body to the back of your body and into your back and all the muscles of your back. And as it does so, the muscles in your back relax, and the pain that might be there is eased. You pull it up over your shoulders and stick your hands underneath. And the warmth of God's peace and presence penetrates into the muscles in your shoulders and your arms, and your hands open, letting go of the things that you are physically and spiritually and emotionally trying to grasp and cling to, at least for this little while. You move it up to under your chin, and the tensions in your neck unwind as the warmth of God's peace moves into your neck. You pull it up over your head. Seems like a silly thing to do, but you just want to be in God's presence and block out the rest of the world for a little while. And as you do so, that warmth and that coziness settles into your mind, and your mind gets calm and peaceful. It covers and settles into the muscles of your face, and your jaw relaxes. You are covered from head to toes in the peace and warmth and love and presence of God. And then in your mind's eye, take yourself to the time of Jesus. And imagine yourself in this story. Who will you be? Through whose eyes will you see it? Will you see it through the eyes of the crowd? Will you see it through the eyes of the Pharisees and teachers of the law? Will you see it through the eyes of Jesus' disciples? Will you see it through the eyes of Jesus? Or the man who is paralyzed? Excuse me. Or the man who is paralyzed? Or the four who are carrying his mat? Take in this story through the eyes of one particular character. Jesus was teaching in the region of Galilee, and one day Pharisees and teachers of the law from the surrounding cities, all of them, and from Jerusalem came. The people were pressing in on Jesus inside a house, and 4 men carrying a man who was paralyzed came to the door of the house. They looked and tried to find a way in, but there was no way. So they climbed up on the roof and lifted the man up onto the roof. And they lowered him down through that roof, having opened the tiles enough to lower him down through, and lowered him right in front of Jesus. And Jesus looked at the man and said, "Friend, your sins are forgiven," because of their faith. There was some mumbling in the crowd. Pharisees and teachers of the law began to say, "Well, who does he think he is? What kind of blasphemy is this, that he can forgive sins? Only God can forgive sins." Jesus can hear them. And he says to them, "Which is easier to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or 'Take up your mat and walk'? But so that you may know that the Son of Man, the human one, has authority to forgive sins." And he turns and looks at the man, and he says, "Take up your mat and walk and go home." The man stood up. He picked up his things, and he went home. And everyone was amazed, and was talking about what strange things they had seen this day. Well, the day comes to an end, and you've been around for a while. What kind of stories does this stir up in you? What kind of prayers are called forth from you? What would you like to say to Jesus if he was standing before you now? What questions do you have? In the quiet of these next few moments, put Jesus in front of you. The two of you are sitting under a tree in the twilight of the day. And Jesus looks you in the eye and invites you to talk. I'll be quiet while the two of you talk. And then the time for the conversation to end comes. And you say goodbye in whatever way is appropriate, and to allow that image to fade away and bring yourself back to the room where you are. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Let's take a break, take a breath for Friday, February 11th. Our text was Luke 5:17 to 26. I should say one more thing about it, though. The title, Son of Man, we're not sure what it means. In Daniel, it's the figure who comes to judge the earth. In Ezekiel, it's translated quite often as mortal, the human being that God has assigned as prophet. And most people today, one good translation is the human one, but it's definitely a title. If you have feedback for me, or if you want to talk or pray, send an email to rick@prospectchurch.org.